Okay, you guys should be able to hear me now. Big up Graham Coleman, Gennady Alvarez, Abdul, big up. Let's see who else is joining the stream. Errol Spence, big up. Felix, G-Man Boxing, yes, yes, yes. Get a couple more people in, and then I'll start. Because today's live stream is going to be a bit different. I'll be basically showing you guys what I've been watching on YouTube and the stuff I've been researching, and just the general things I've been looking at. I'll be showing you guys the stuff and playing a few things for you and talking about it. Big up Mark. Yes, Felix. Adrian, yes, good evening, sir. Oh yeah, Julian Assange, right? He got arrested. I need to dig more into Julian Assange in terms of his arrest, because I've talked quite a bit about Julian Assange in the past and recommended Richard D. Hall's set of videos that he did about Julian Assange. I think it was really informative. Abs Boxing, yes, what's good? Alright, so let's get this party started. Let's get this party started. That's what Michael Buffer says these days, right? Okay, so I want to start off by talking about a question I get sometimes about the street life, right? I think it was Errol Spence who asked me what I think about the streets and snitching and all this kind of stuff, youngsters getting involved in gangs and crime and what have you. Well, first and foremost, what I would say is I would advise anybody against getting involved in the street life, particularly in this day and age, because there are so many legitimate ways to make money in this day and age in the modern world, and it's so much more difficult to get away with criminal activity today because of the advances in law enforcement and surveillance. I would advise anybody against getting involved in crime and in the streets, for one, just from a logical point of view, because you ain't gonna get away with it. You're gonna go down, you're gonna go prison, you're gonna get something bad probably gonna happen to you. That's just the reality of it in this day and age. And from a moral point of view, I don't want to get into that argument, because some people are gonna say, well, if I sell weed or if I sell coke, how is that different than somebody selling alcohol or somebody selling fast food? Because they all kill people, right? They all harm people's health, so how is it different? So I don't want to get into that argument, because we'll be going back and forth forever. But I would just say, and when it comes to the whole moral thing about it, let's say you rob drug dealers, that's your thing, and you justify that in your head. Okay, there's nothing wrong with robbing drug dealers, they're selling poison to people. Understand the baggage that comes with that. It's not just being on the street, being a career criminal. That's not just a career choice. Yeah, that is a lifestyle choice. Because the movie Layer Cake, I don't know how many of you guys have seen that, Layer Cake, with Daniel Craig. In that movie, Daniel Craig plays a drug dealer who is basically a businessman, right? He's a businessman who happens to deal drugs. His commodity that he trades in happens to be cocaine. But the way he conducts himself, his attitude, the way he lives his life is just like a businessman. He's not no kind of low life, attention seeking, glory hunting, loudmouth, flash narcissist. That's not his style in Layer Cake. He's just a businessman that sells cocaine. Well, I don't know how realistic it is to be that kind of drug dealer, particularly if you live in the inner city. Yeah, if you're some young kid in the inner city, more than likely you're going to get sucked into the criminal culture. And the criminal culture in the inner city is a narcissistic culture. It's all about who's the toughest, who's got the most money, who's got the nicest girl, who's got the nicest car. That's what you're going to get sucked into. So even if you in your head think you can justify selling your drugs or robbing drug dealers or whatever it is that you're doing, even if you think you can justify it morally, understand that you're going to get dragged into a lifestyle. You're going to get dragged into a culture where you're probably going to end up doing things, you know, aside from how you're making money, you're probably going to end up doing other things that are immoral. You know, having to hurt people, having to kidnap people, or maybe hurt somebody's family member, or do something that is going to affect other people other than just who you're doing business with or who you're targeting to rob. You understand what I'm telling you? So I would advise anyone, first and foremost, to stay away from the streets. In 2019, there are so many ways to make money. You can go on YouTube and make money. You can go on Instagram and make money. You can, you know, do trading and getting goods from China and selling it online. These are all kind of opportunities which back in the days we didn't have. You know, in the 1990s and the 1980s, we never had these opportunities. And I'm not making excuses for, you know, criminal activity back then. But what I'm saying is, there's less excuse for it now, you know? Just as people might say there's no excuse for it even then, there's even less excuse for it now because there's so many opportunities for young people and, you know, whoever to make money. Nowadays, the only people who are really going to choose to be career criminals are people who are incredibly dumb. Either people who are incredibly dumb or people who come from criminal families, whose fathers and mothers and uncles were all career criminals, and so therefore they go into the family business. Yeah, those are the kind of people. But any normal person, you go to school, okay, you're in the inner city, there's stuff going on, there's whatever. If you got any kind of sense in your head, you're not gonna go down the path of becoming a career criminal. You're gonna end up going to prison. You're gonna spend a lot of your life in prison, and I'm gonna show you the consequences, right? And the consequences today are worse than they used to be. You know, when I was growing up in the 90s, there wasn't even the 5-year mandatory for carrying a gun. You know, there was loads of things you could get away with back then. You know, back then the police, I think it's changed now, but back then when you were carrying drugs, the police couldn't search your mouth. Yeah, so all the drug dealers and stuff like that, they would carry drugs under their tongue. Nowadays they can search your mouth, as far as I'm aware. You know, maybe you guys will tell me I'm wrong, but I swear they changed the law on that. They certainly changed the law with regards to firearms. Now they got a mandatory 5-year tariff if you get caught with a firearm, regardless of the sentence, regardless of the circumstances. So today, with all the advanced, you know, surveillance and forensics and all that kind of stuff, you're gonna go to prison, and you don't want to go to prison. Prison is dead. Prison is not a cool place. You don't want to go there. You're going to waste your time there. You're going to come out of prison if you do a long stretch, and you're going to wish that you hadn't gone to prison in the first place. Yeah? So that's my strong advice to tell any young person: stay away from being part of that criminal culture, the criminal lifestyle. It's all hype. It's all BS. And I'll show you exactly how, you know, what kind of BS it really is now. Right, let me just put my screen on screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Where we at? Okay. Right, this is a guy who has emerged on the social media scene. This guy right here you can see on screen. He calls himself African Child, and he says that his street name was Spider. This is a video. Somebody sent me one of this guy's videos a couple of days ago, a friend of mine, right? And this guy claims to be like a former bad man or something who just came out of prison, and he's 35 years old now, yeah? And he's been involved in, I think, robberies and stuff like that. That's what he says he went to prison for a bunch of armed robberies and whatever back in the days. And now he's on social media, basically clout chasing. He's calling out all these different rappers. He's calling out all these different road men and stuff like that, saying that they're all pussies and snitches and all this kind of business. Now, one of the reasons I want to play you this guy's video is this. I said in one of my podcasts a few weeks ago that, and I've said this several times, that a lot of the top gangsters on the streets in the inner city are snitches. And you see, this is why the game is a game. There is no honor. The old saying, there's no honor among thieves. There is no honor among thieves. There's no honor among gangsters neither. Because the guy who you think is the toughest, roughest, top shotter, bad man on the road, that guy is going to roll over and he's going to snitch 9 times out of 10 when his neck is on the chopping block. If the option is there for him to walk free or get a very, greatly reduced sentence in exchange for sending somebody else down, 9 times out of 10 he's going to do it. Even though he was probably the biggest anti-snitch campaigner on the streets, right? He might have stabbed people for snitching. He might have beat people up for snitching. He might have go sent guys to kidnap somebody and torture them for snitching. He might have done all those things. But when he's in that position, guess what he's going to do? He's going to snitch. 9 times out of 10, that's going to happen. And I told you guys that I've known of many people, top gangsters in the black community in South London, who ended up being snitches. And some of them were police informants all along, right? They were getting away with all kinds of drug dealing, making millions of pounds and killing people and all kind of crazy stuff. And these people would never go to prison. They get arrested and they're back on the road in a week. And it turns out that these guys were police informants. Yeah? I can think of 2 people specifically that I'm directly thinking of right now who were operating in the Brixton area back in the days, in the 90s, early 2000s. And they were snitches. They were police informants. So understand, if you're a young person who's not going to take my advice and you think you are savvy enough to deal with life on the streets, understand that that's what's going to go on the streets. There's no honor. There's a bunch of jokers out there who act like they've got honor and that they hate snitches and this, that, and the other, but they themselves are snitching. That's how wicked the game is. And never mind just inner city in the UK. Go and research the mob, the mafia. This guy right here, right? This guy you can see here. Michael Francesi, okay? This guy was one of the few mob, I guess he was like a capo in the mob back in the days. He's nearly 70 years old now, this guy. I tell you, he's aging well for nearly 70, right? But yeah, he was part of that whole mob generation where John Gotti and all them kind of mob guys were at the forefront. And John Gotti got eventually sent down. He was the boss, right? He was the head of one of the mafia families in New York City. He was the last high-profile mob boss, because back in the days, the mafia bosses in New York were well known. Like, they used to talk about them on the news, and even the ones who didn't want to be public, the news would openly say, "Oh, this is the person who's thought to be the head of such and such crime family, the Gambino family, or whatever it may be." But nowadays you don't really hear about them no more. I'm sure the mob still exists, but they don't have the kind of vice grip that they used to have back in the days. But anyway, this guy was part of that life, and he's one of the few who actually got out without going to prison or ended up dead or whatever. But John Gotti, somebody he knew, got taken down because his right-hand man, Sammy Gravano, aka the Bull, snitched on him. Sammy Gravano was a killer. Sammy Gravano put people under the ground. You understand? This guy was a hitman for the mob, Sammy Gravano. This was a very high-ranking member of that particular crime family. He wasn't some cupcake. So a lot of people would assume, well, he's not going to snitch, right? He's a killer. He's a top mob guy. He snitched. You understand? He snitched. So you ain't just got to worry about the police. You ain't just got to worry about the average Joe Schmo snitching on you. No, the guy you're making money with, your top killer, your right-hand man, the guy you think you can rely on, the guy who maybe grew up with you and used to play in your house as kids, that person's going to snitch on you. Look at Henry Hill, another mob guy who the movie Goodfellas is based on. He ratted on his childhood friends. Or certainly, yeah, Joey in the movie. In fact, no, Joey got killed, didn't it? He didn't rat on him. But anyway, he ratted on people he'd known for a very long time in the mob, right? Friends, guys he'd, come up with through the ranks and all that kind of stuff. He didn't care. He ratted them all out. I mean, Nicky Barnes, back in the days in Harlem, in New York City, he ratted everybody out. He was a big time heroin dealer and stuff like that. He ratted everybody out. That's what the game is. It's wicked. You understand? It's not. I always say the streets are like a microcosm of the macrocosm. So the streets are like a miniature version of what goes on in geopolitics. In geopolitics, the very politicians who point fingers and accuse others of war crimes and genocide or corruption themselves are doing exactly what they're accusing other people of doing. Yeah, that's why psychopaths often make it to the top in politics and the corporate world, just as they do in the streets, the world of organized crime, or even less organized crime. You find a lot of psychopaths and obviously even more sociopaths, and these people don't have a conscience. These people don't have a code, morals, etc. Most of them. Some of them do. And in fact, the ones who do have a code are probably the least psychopathic. They're probably to some extent sociopathic, but less psychopathic. A psychopath don't give a damn about no street code. The rules are for you. The rules are not for him. They're for you. He only makes the rules and enforces them so he can break them himself. Anyway, let me play a bit of this video to show you guys what I'm talking about. He's gonna start naming very, very serious individuals. Very serious individuals, and I'm gonna get on to what I think of this guy and what he's really up to. But he starts naming some very serious individuals from North London, yeah. And yeah, let me just play it anyway. You'll see what I'm saying.
How many of Young Spray's people have got man locked up? Clint has got bare man in jail, blood, riding. That fucking C1 that run to Dubai, little fucking rat. He snitched on bare man. He snitched on, even snitching from early, fam. And man, them was still supporting him. All them Leon Smith, they were still supporting him, knowing fully well your brethren just snitched. And you man still want to be a part of this wicked life. This wicked, brother, you can't be both. Bro, it's like you saying I'm a Fed and I'm also a roadman. That's what you men are. You men are police and want to be roadman. Because if I hear any of my niggas snitched on a man.
Alright, anyway. That's enough of that. You don't need to hear too much of this ignorant nonsense. But basically, he's naming a bunch of people who are serious guys. Or at least they were serious guys back in the days. Right? And he's accusing them of snitching. Now, this is not the first time I've heard people in real life, not on the internet, not rumors, people I know in real life, tell me that these guys are snitches, that these guys are police informants. So, again, as a young person, why would you want to be part of that life where a lot of the top guys are snitches, where you got the police on your case, there's surveillance, you got to worry about violence towards you and maybe even family members and friends, and you maybe having to commit violence on other people? How's that going to affect their family and their friends? Just stay out of the streets. There's no logical good reason in this day and age, unless you come from a really fucked up family and then you're really just a victim of your upbringing. But in the UK today, the environment for most people is not so desperate and bad, and the opportunities are not so few that you would need to resort to becoming a career criminal. Yeah, they glamorize it in the music. They make it seem cool. It's not cool. It's not cool. Why do you want to live a life where you're having to look over your shoulder, look over your, your back? Every tiny little thing that you do, you have to think about it and worry about it. Back in the days, again, there was no internet. There was no smartphones. There was hardly any CCTV back in the days, actually. Whereas today, you got to worry about a whole heap of different things. Stay away from it. That's what I would tell you. And as far as this guy, this AC, aka Spider. He's on there dissing all these big time roadmen from Tottenham especially, and he's dissing all these different rappers and stuff like that, calling them snitches and pussies and all this business. And when my friend sent me this, and this guy's calling out all these people as snitches, my first reaction was, this guy might be a snitch. That's how wicked the game is. Understand what I'm telling you? That's how wicked the game. This guy, who's like the biggest anti-snitch campaigner on the internet, right? Why? And he's talking about meeting people and shooting them and fighting people and all this kind of bad man talk. If this guy's really about all that, why is he on Instagram Live calling people out? If you're going to do something to somebody, you don't call them out on Instagram Live, because then when something happens to that person, the police know where to go. So this guy, he's drawing everybody out. Yeah, all these bad boys from Tottenham and all this kind, he's drawing them out by calling them out on social media. He's bringing it all into the public arena. You understand? So somebody doing that, why would they be doing that? To me, it's either he's afraid of those guys and he thinks they're going to do something to him anyway, so he's drawing them out in a public arena and making it a public beef, and he thinks maybe he can get some protection by making it a public beef. Or it's a setup situation where maybe he got some time off, or maybe he's got some charges hanging over him and the police have sent him to do this. I don't know for sure. Maybe he's just crazy. Yeah, maybe he's not a snitch. Maybe he's just some crazy guy who's reckless and he don't know what he's doing. That's also possible. But don't discount the possibility that a guy like this could actually be some kind of, police informant himself. Because that's how wicked the game is. You understand? And you see, the guy says a bunch of stuff like, real bad boys move in silence, and this is all the stuff that he comes out with. But yet he himself is contradicting all of the things that he's preaching, so I did find it to be a very interesting situation, because he's calling out people who don't get called out. You understand? Who very rarely get called out. He's calling out like roadmen, top guys who have been there, seen it and done it. And I'm not going to go into all the stuff they've done, all right, because some of these guys haven't been locked up for the stuff they've done, but they've done very serious things, like as serious as it gets, multiple times, and yet they're walking free. And he's calling these guys out, putting his own safety, you would think, in danger. And in some of his videos, he's talking about who is rolling with him, and he's not talking about who's rolling with him. Who the ultimate partner to have on the streets, yeah, the ultimate protection to have on the streets is the government, is the police. That's the ultimate protection. If you got the police with you, if you're some kind of informant, then you can get away with all kinds of stuff, including murder. You can get away with throwing your weight around and doing this, that, and the other, because the police are going to nick them and they ain't going to nick you. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about the whole street life. Please stay away from it. There's no need to get involved in any of that in 2019. It's all BS. There's plenty of other ways to make money. Just, work hard. Whatever your talent is, whatever your interest is, whatever you're interested in, just focus on it. Put your energy into it from early. And go for it. And eventually it will turn into something. Yeah? It will turn into something. There's so many opportunities today. I can't say there's always going to be opportunities, but right now there's still a lot of opportunities to have businesses online and stuff like that. So again, focus on what your talent is. If you have a talent for selling stuff, if you've got a gift of the gab, if you've got, I don't know, a talent, an eye for fashion, if you maybe could be a consultant, wherever it is that you think you've got a talent for or have got an interest in, even if you don't have a talent for it, if you've got a strong interest in it, focus on it, become obsessed with it, put your energy into it, and eventually it will prosper. Do that. And there's not enough emphasis, I think, when it comes to parents supporting their kids in terms of what they're interested in or their talent. Yeah, so many parents don't focus enough on that. And there was a discussion, a long time, years ago, even in the media, about how practical the things we learn in school really are in the workplace. Because I can't say that I've applied hardly anything that I learned in school to, my working life, other than reading and writing. Yeah, other than being literate, most of what I learned in school hasn't been of any value to me during my working life. I mean, I guess it depends on what line of work you go into. But for me personally, it hasn't been of any benefit to me. It would have been far more beneficial for me if I was in some kind of, how certain families, right, might run a shop. And certainly in third world countries, this is true. A child who's like 8, 9, 10 years old will be working in their family shop. Now in Britain, that's illegal. Okay, but in other countries, it happens. Now, what happens when that child becomes an adult? When that child's an adult, they know how to run a shop. They know how to manage a shop. Yeah? So you might say, oh, it's wrong that the child's been doing this, that, and the other. That child that child can now go anywhere and manage a shop. They know all about the stock. They know all about the calculations. They know all about balancing the books. They know all about dealing with the customer. They know everything, inside out. You don't get taught that in school. You understand? You don't get taught the practical skills that you may need to learn in the real world workplace. So the parents have to take matters into their own hands when it comes to preparing their kids for the real world. When it comes to preparing their kids for being employed or having their own business and stuff like that, you need to be proactive. You can't just rely on school to teach your kids what your kids need to know. Don't rely on the school. Do it yourself. Be proactive in your child's life. Yeah? Give them options. Give them skills. So that they're not lost when they come out of school and they don't know what they're doing. Because when they're lost and they don't know what they're doing, that's when they're more likely to go down the wrong path. That's when they're more likely to, follow idiots like this and think it's cool to be some Instagram troll who is either a police informant or he's so dumb that someone's going to come and do something to him or someone's going to come and do something to, one of his family members. So don't be that guy, right? Don't let your child be that person. Be proactive in your child's life. Give them real skills along the way. Teach them a trade, If you have a trade, teach your son the trade. I know it's hard to get kids to do this, that, and the other, but try as hard as you can, It's very difficult, to be honest with you. I don't have kids, right? But I know it's very difficult raising kids in a modern world because of all the technology. The kids are addicted to the technology. The kids are addicted to the smartphones and the PlayStations and the Xboxes and the tablets and the television. They're addicted to all this stuff. Back in the days, it would have been much easier to teach your child a trade. Whereas today, it's difficult because there's so many distractions. And in fact, I was watching one of David Icke's videos, right? I do watch David Icke's videos on his YouTube channel on a regular basis. I'm not saying I agree with everything David Icke says. I'm not saying I agree with all his beliefs. I don't. But he is a very intelligent man. Yeah? So, look, even if you think he's crazy, you can be crazy and intelligent at the same time. And he was quoting various different articles and interviews with people from tech companies and, giving some anecdotes about people who work at a fairly high level in the tech industry. And he was saying a lot of these people in Silicon Valley, these high level tech people in Silicon Valley, software and hardware developers and stuff like that, a lot of these people don't allow their children to use smart devices. So the very people who are creating the technology, many of them don't allow their kids to use it, because they know how negative the effects are of using all this technology for children, how it can hamper their development, how it can, distract them, how it can, social media and stuff like that can be emotionally traumatic for children, So that is something that I've been researching, the effects of social media, smart devices, and all this kind of stuff on children. But then again, you know, one thing I do have to say to play devil's advocate and to show the other side of that is if your child is really heavily invested in technology, and a lot of their attention goes there, maybe they can end up being, you know, someone who makes loads of money from YouTube or loads of money from Instagram or, you know, so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it comes down to an individual situation and recognizing as a parent what your child is good at, you know. So if your child is online all the time and you don't think you can get them offline, then focus on pushing them in a direction whereby they're going to be making money online, not doing what this guy's doing. Hell no. This is foolishness. But if they're selling stuff online, if there's some kind of entertainer who's not bringing violence upon themselves and who's not promoting violence, yeah, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, I'm going to move on from this now, talking about all this kind of business, and start talking about something else which is pretty bizarre, which some of you guys may know about, and I've kind of researched it a little bit over the past couple years, and that is this Paul is dead conspiracy, right? This idea, which has been going around for decades, by the way, this conspiracy theory, I believe, came out originally in the 60s or 70s, and the theory is that Paul McCartney, the real Paul McCartney, died in 1966 or something like that in a car crash, but it was covered up and a replacement was brought in, and he had all kinds of surgery and, you know, makeup applied to make him look like the original Paul, and it's basically been this imposter playing the role of Paul McCartney all along. This is the conspiracy, and they say they've got loads of evidence. You know, they can show pictures of the old Paul versus the new Paul and show how it's a different guy. They've got loads of circumstantial evidence that they bring up, like how the Beatles, after a certain date, I think it was 66 or 67, they never performed live again. Yeah, which is very unusual, obviously, for a band who are that big to not perform live anymore. They just became a studio band after that. And there are, you know, clues in certain interviews where, because they say the real person who, or the person who plays the character Paul McCartney today, is, his real name is Bill, right? Bill Shepherd or Bill Campbell. There are, you know, different claims about his surname. And they say that in various different interviews that you can watch, you hear people call the person who is apparently Paul McCartney, they call him Bill. And if you go to some of their YouTube videos where they're researching this, you will actually see certain interviews where people appear to call Paul McCartney Bill. What other evidence do they bring up? Song lyrics and stuff like that. There's the cover of, is it the Abbey Road album, where the Beatles are walking across the road and Paul McCartney is barefoot? And that is the first, I think that's the first album that came out after Paul McCartney, the real Paul McCartney, quote unquote, is supposed to have died. So it's an interesting conspiracy theory. Here's my take on it. Now, this is a crazy world and anything is possible, but I've looked at a lot of these Paul McCartney conspiracy videos, and I've looked at the photo comparisons, right? And to me, the original Paul McCartney looks like the Paul McCartney today. Yeah, you can bring up photos where he looks different in certain, with a certain hairstyle, or this one he's got a mustache, or this one is a different angle, or this one he looks a bit thinner, or this one you know, depending on the angle that you photograph somebody, it can distort the proportions of somebody's face. Yeah, you take your camera and your phone out right now, point it at your face with your head tilted back, and it's gonna change the proportions of your face. So they say the camera never lies. Well, actually the camera does lie sometimes, or the camera misrepresents what's actually there sometimes. So, and you know, I know plenty of people where you look at pictures of them, you know, different pictures over a number of years, and if they lose weight, gain weight, are photographed from a different angle, change their hairstyle, etc., etc., it can look like a completely different person. Some people have faces like that, where it looks like a totally different person depending on the lighting and how they're photographed. So I'm not at all convinced that the Paul McCartney today is not the same Paul McCartney from the beginning. I'm not convinced by that. To me, it looks like the same guy. Yeah. What I will say is the whole Heather Mills situation was very interesting. You guys might not remember, or some of you may, some of you won't. Heather Mills was Paul McCartney's ex-wife. She was a model from the northeast of England who had one leg. All right, I can't remember how she lost her leg. I think it must have been like a car accident or something. But he was married to this Heather Mills woman, and I remember when she filed for divorce, she was on breakfast television in the UK, basically trying to blackmail Paul McCartney. At least that's my interpretation of what she was doing. And she was saying that she had some explosive evidence, like a box full of evidence. And she didn't specifically name Paul McCartney, I guess for legal reasons, but everybody knew she was talking about Paul McCartney. And I think even on the program they said, you're talking about Paul McCartney, right? And she was like, I have to protect myself legally. So she didn't go ahead and name him specifically, but everybody knows she was talking about Paul McCartney. And she was saying that she has basically a box of evidence which would absolutely shock the world. It would shock the world if she revealed this evidence. And it's like she was using it as leverage to get what she wanted out of Paul McCartney in the divorce. What could she have which, you know, would shock the world? And the people who believe in the Paul McCartney, Paul is dead conspiracy, they think that it was evidence that Paul McCartney is not really Paul McCartney. That it's some kind of actor or imposter who's been playing the role of a dead person for however many decades. But in my mind, I was thinking, maybe it's some pedophile ring business. I don't want to put that on him, alright? I don't want to get sued by Paul McCartney. But, you know, just the way the celebrity world is going, with everybody getting outed as pedophiles, that's what crossed my mind. I was like, I wonder if it's that. I wonder if she had some kind of like pedophile ring business on him. But then if she did, she couldn't have been the only one, surely. You know? But actually, no. Maybe it's not no pedophile ring business, because she said that someone very close to her, someone that she loves, betrayed her, and it wasn't infidelity, but it was some monumental betrayal. So what does that mean? Is that like maybe it's not a pedo thing, maybe he slept with her daughter, or I don't know. But anyway, the proponents of this Paul is dead conspiracy are always talking about the Heather Mills situation. And you know, after Heather Mills got her divorce settlement, we haven't heard a peep from her since, right? Has anybody heard from Heather Mills since? I haven't heard a peep from this woman. She don't say nothing ever since. Them times she was non-stop yapping in the press and on the television about all this scandalous information she's got about Paul McCartney. When she got her millions and millions in the settlement, it's all gone. You know, she don't talk about none of that no more. So yeah, I do find it interesting. And here's another thing I will say. The intelligence agencies and certain, I guess, government think tanks which specialize in the study of human behavior, the study in culture creation, the study and implement the manipulation of human psychology and the herd psychology. They have people like this in the deep state, okay, whose job it is to manipulate our behavior and to find out the best way to influence our behavior. Logically, think about it. Think about how influential music artists and celebrities are. If you are a government, if you are a deep state, why wouldn't you want to have some of these music artists in your pocket and have these and use these music artists as tools of social engineering? Why wouldn't you want to do that? Think about it from a logical point of view. Of course you're going to do that. You're going to try and get music artists to influence society in the way that you want society to go. Yeah, of course you're going to do that. And one of the interesting things about Paul McCartney is one of his ex-girlfriends. You guys can, verify this if you want to look into the Paul is there conspiracy. One of his ex-girlfriends was the daughter of a man who was involved in mind control experiments, like the MK Ultra experiments. All right, and MK Ultra is something I talked about before. MK Ultra is very real. It's not no conspiracy theory or anything like that. MK Ultra is very real, and it was a mind control program of the CIA back in the, I think, 60s and earlier. And the only reason that we even know publicly about MK Ultra today, the only reason there's a Wikipedia page on it, is because information about it got leaked. Yeah. Ostensibly, there appears to have been a very concerted effort to bury the MK Ultra program and prevent it from ever seeing the light of day, information on it. But because some of the information got out, and even on the Wikipedia page, it will tell you that a lot of the files for MK Ultra were burned, were destroyed. So there was, to me, clearly a concerted effort to bury that program and never let the public know about it. But because part of it got out, that's why we know, and that's why they had to acknowledge that MK Ultra did exist. Now again, think logically. Why would they have a program like that and not have one today? Why would they have one in the 60s and not have one now? What sense would it make? What, they're no longer interested in human psychology? They're no longer interested in trying to control the human mind? Am I crazy for thinking that they would still be interested in that stuff now? They're probably more interested in that stuff now than they ever have been, because their methods of psychological manipulation are more sophisticated now. Because one of the main things that they were experimenting with in the MK Ultra program was the use of LSD to try and, manipulate human psychology and see the effects of LSD and how they could use it, or derivatives of LSD and all this kind of stuff to try and control somebody's mind and therefore control their behavior. I mean, even in the world of black ops, right? Even in the world of espionage, spies, the intelligence agencies, wouldn't they want people who are like super spies, people who they can mind control, like the Manchurian Candidate? Wouldn't they want people like that? Think about it from a logical point of view. They were doing experiments to try and create those kind of people in MK Ultra. Why wouldn't they still be doing that now? Maybe they've perfected that kind of thing. Yeah, again, I'm talking about stuff which you can look up in from mainstream sources, not just random YouTube videos. Mainstream sources. Look up MK Ultra. And so for Paul McCartney to have been dating a girl whose dad was, involved in mind control experiments, and in fact Paul McCartney apparently wrote some of his songs in the very house where this guy had his practice, where he was doing certain experiments or what have you. Maybe I've got some of the facts slightly off, but I'm sure it's that. You guys can double check it if you want to look into this. And you do find links between the Beatles and a lot of insidious organizations and insidious people. We know that, for example, the CIA, we know now from public record, as far as I can remember, the CIA were phone tapping John Lennon, or they were bugging John Lennon. Yeah. John Lennon obviously was somebody who tried to get involved in politics. He tried to influence the youth politics in the United States and worldwide. Is it a stretch of the imagination to think that John Lennon was actually knocked off, was actually taken out by elements of the American deep state because they didn't want him influencing young people to vote in a particular direction, or they didn't want him mobilizing people? Because you have to understand, during that period, through the 60s, 70s, very early 80s, there were many public figures, celebrities who were actively involved in politics, who had an enormous influence over the actions of many people. This wasn't like today where celebrities come out and say something and nobody's going to do anything about it. Back then, when John Lennon would get up and say something and say do this or do that to his followers, people would do it. People would get out in the street and actually mobilize. When Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, obviously as a boxer, when they would get out there and say stuff to the black community, black people would start doing stuff. Do you understand? Like in the 60s, the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam, they had confrontations with the police. They had shootouts with the police. Like, they were mobilizing people. You know, today, none of the celebrities are mobilizing anybody. And so, when you look at the John Lennons, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, we know that they were being monitored by the CIA. We know that even Bob Marley had attempts on his life. These are people and who existed during a time where artists were actually mobilizing people on a political level. From a logical point of view, can't you see how the deep state would want to take people like that out if they can't control them and get them under their wing? Can't you see how they'd want to take them out? You can't see the motivation for it? Like, logically, there's a motivation there to want to take people like that out. Because you feel like these people are meddling in the affairs of your country. You know, you want to keep it all politicians and politics because you know that game and you can play that game. You can manipulate that game. But when it's all these celebrities and stuff like that, pulling people this way or pulling people that way, we can't have that. Who the hell are they? They need to be controlled. And if they can't be controlled, they need to be taken out. In my opinion, that's what happened to all of them. You know, call me a crazy conspiracy theorist, but to me, it's very logical. It's very logical. I can't prove it empirically in every instance, but I strongly suspect that that's what happened in each and every one of their cases, that they were taken out. Today, I don't know if it's as prevalent as it used to be because, as I say, these celebrities today are not really mobilizing anybody. You know, so it's a very different kind of time. But yeah, even just for entertainment purposes, because really and truly, I looked into the Paul McCartney conspiracy just for entertainment. You know, just for entertainment. It's not going to change my life looking into this or anything like that. But for entertainment value, I looked into the Paul is dead conspiracy. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. And then finally, before I start to get to your questions, I want to talk about one more thing here. A very contentious character, at least when it comes to me on my podcast, is Joe Rogan, right? Because people always ask me about Joe Rogan. What do you think of Joe Rogan? Did you see this Joe Rogan? I don't like Joe Rogan. If you like Joe Rogan, that's all good. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't like him. But people always come to me and say, oh, Joe Rogan. I don't like the guy, right? I don't find his podcast very informative to me. He has some good guests on there, but those guests are also on other podcasts with people who, in my opinion, ask much better questions. People who dive a lot deeper. Someone like Joe Rogan, for me, where I'm at on my intellectual journey of enlightenment, if you want to call it that, his stuff is like playground business. It's child's play. That's where Joe Rogan's at, and that's where he stays. Okay, that's just for me, in my opinion. And this guy right here, before I play the video, let me switch it to a picture. I don't want to get no copyright issues. Yeah, this guy right here on screen, he's a guy called Jeremy Riss. Okay, Jeremy, and his surname is spelled R-Y-S. He has a YouTube channel, which is a long-standing YouTube channel called The Alien Scientist. Now, he can be a pretty abrasive character sometimes, Jeremy Riss. But one thing I can tell you about him is he is very, very intelligent. He has a degree in physics. Okay, this is a certifiable degree. It's not no, BS or anything like that. So he's a qualified physicist, and he applies the kind of thinking, the kind of mind that you have to have being a physicist. He applies that to researching conspiracy theories. Now, he has debunked, at least to his satisfaction, he thinks he's debunked a number of conspiracy theories, but he also claims that there are very real conspiracies, like 9/11, for example. He's done some of the most forensic work I've ever seen on 9/11. All right, Jeremy Riss, the alien scientist. He's done some incredibly forensic work. When I mean forensic, I mean tracing the money. It's extremely in-depth, naming names, naming corporations, money trails, and all kinds of other stuff when it comes to 9/11. But he also researched like the Boston bombing, and he's from Boston, and he is adamant because he went out on the streets at the time in Boston, and he said that it wasn't actors, or well, he said that there was bombs that went off because he went out there and he could see shrapnel damage and, you know, blood and all this other kind of stuff that he claims he could see. Now, some people have said, oh, he's a shill because everyone knows the Boston bombing wasn't, you know, a real event. But look, I don't want to get into all that. All I know is that he's definitely has good critical thinking skills. All right, I'm not gonna say I agree with everything he says, and I'm not saying that he might be a little short-sighted on some issues, because I think he is. But generally speaking, this is a guy who thinks very critically. He's got a scientific background, and yeah, that's what that is. But anyway, here I'm gonna play you this clip here where he's talking about Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, and he basically sums up my feelings, particularly on Alex Jones, but also basically showing you what Joe Rogan's platform is partially about. Okay, at least my view of what Joe Rogan's platform is partially about. So let me play it anyway, so you guys can hear what he's saying. Let's get the volume right here.
That was another case of conspiracy theories, and I think it's got to be someone else. I mean,
all right, first let me just pause here. So what he's talking about, first of all, is how Alex Jones would have crazy people as correspondents on his show. So whacked out, you know, stereotypical tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, Alex Jones would have them as correspondents on his show on a regular basis. Joe Rogan has the same. Whenever I see the conspiracy people on Joe Rogan's show, it's always the most whacked out, melodramatic, reactionary people on Joe Rogan's show represent the conspiracy theorists. So he has people on there who are going to make all conspiracy theorists look crazy. And you can add Alex Jones to that list. All right. So this is what Jeremy Riss is talking about right now with regards to Alex Jones, but also to Joe Rogan. So continue listening.
I mean, there's no shortage of mentally ill people that do this on their own, but it just shows that there's a hidden hand out there that selectively grabs those kind of loose nutcases and props them up for people so that they can say, look, it's like a puppet master who grabs the puppet, picks him up, holds him before the audience and says, here, look at this, look at the puppet. This is what a conspiracy theorist is, and this is what all conspiracy theories are, and this is why you shouldn't believe in conspiracy theories and why conspiracy theories are silly and stupid and ridiculous. Even though that gives us justification to carry out real false flag attacks for an agenda, where we can then get away with it much more easily, or get away with the real ones by associating all these fake ones with it through conspiracy theories, and kind of what I believe was done with Alex Jones in a way, with Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan podcast, with this fake fight they had. War, Joe Rogan. God sent me to destroy you, and then have him on the show. Oh, then we're buddies again, and we're gonna have you on my show. But we're gonna have Alex do this whole session with Dr. Phil, and really like give him therapy on his conspiratorial thinking and his mindset and behaviors that like got him into all this trouble. And yeah, it's if that isn't like set up and staged, then I don't know what the fuck is.
Yeah, set up and staged. Now, for something to be set up and staged, it doesn't necessarily mean both parties are in on it. Sometimes when something is set up and staged, only one party needs to be in on it. the other party can be in the dark, all right, and just being played like a fiddle. And if any party in that Joe Rogan, Alex Jones situation is in the dark, it's definitely Alex Jones, not Joe Rogan. But I suspect neither one of them is in the dark. That's what I suspect. But some people believe Alex Jones is genuinely crazy, mentally ill. Other people believe he's just a very good actor. I mean, if you ever saw the Alex Jones show, right, when he would sit there and he would rant. You know, when he's screaming and, the globalists, and he's doing all this stuff. Like, doesn't it come across like acting to you? Doesn't it seem very theatrical? And I know Americans can be genuinely very theatrical, okay? Whereby to a British person, because we're a lot more reserved than Americans, right? To a British person, their behavior can seem like over the top, but that's actually them being sincere, and it's not necessarily them acting. There may be an element of that, but I don't know, man. Alex Jones, InfoWars became very powerful. Alex Jones basically got Donald Trump elected, you know? And so, Alex Jones getting Donald Trump elected, and then Alex Jones being destroyed. Like, think about that. The world leading conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones, is then publicly destroyed and dismantled. And what does that have what are the ramifications of that, of Alex Jones being publicly dismantled like that? The ramifications are that the entire conspiracy movement, the entire truth seeker, truth movement also takes a blow, because your world leading, the leader of all you conspiracy theorists has now been shown as crazy, as a fraud, as pushing baseless conspiracy theories and, all this kind of business. So for the deep state, that's a win for them, isn't it? Because we know that there are real conspiracies. That's not up for debate. That's a fact. Yeah, I keep on directing people towards Operation Northwoods. That was a conspiracy by the CIA to kill American citizens in terrorist attacks and blame it on Cuba. That's documented mainstream facts. Yeah, and I say mainstream not because I trust the mainstream, but because a lot of people, including some people listening right now, are not going to trust any information unless it comes from a mainstream source, what they will call a reputable source. Anything that comes from an alternative news website or a YouTube video, they're going to call it fake news. Okay, well, you go look up Operation Northwoods and you'll find lots of mainstream articles that talk about that. All right, so in the intelligence community in the United States, in the early days of Castro's Cuba, they were willing, certain elements of the CIA and the intelligence community in the United States, they were willing to kill American citizens in staged terrorist attacks and blame it on Cuba as a pretext to invading Cuba. That was going on then. What makes you think it's not going on now? Many of the same characters who were around then are still around now. People who are involved in American politics. And I'm not directly implicating them in being involved in terrorist attacks, but I'm just showing you that there's continuity. Like, for example, Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, look how long that guy's been involved in American politics. It's crazy how long that guy's been involved in American politics for. They keep wheeling this guy out, regardless if it's a Republican government or a Democratic government. They wheel this guy out as some kind of advisor. They send him all over the world talking to people. Come on. And you think he's the only one? No, there are lots of people like that, where there's continuity between the intelligence community and governments and the deep state decades ago when Operation Northwoods was going on, and elements of the deep state now. There's continuity in terms of the personnel, and it's my logical deduction that there's also continuity in terms of the philosophy, the ideology. I think there's also continuity to some extent with that. So yeah, I think that there is a concerted effort to basically discredit anybody who is trying to investigate high-level corruption. That's what the whole fake news meme is all about. That's what the whole conspiracy theorist tag is all about. And just as Jeremy Riss said, I think the powers that be, think about it logically, if the powers that be are worried about the conspiracy movement, which they are, which is why they're removing fake news from the internet and, you know, deleting channels from the internet who investigate false flags and stuff like that. If they're worried about it, then why not push certain people who are crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists to the forefront and let them get big? Why not do that? Because those people are going to hang themselves. That's what they're going to do. You know, they're going to hang themselves with their own rope. So the deep state is giving people ropes to hang themselves with, because they can identify people who are crazy and maybe feed people who are crazy bad information that makes everybody look bad. So they can, as Jeremy Riss said, hold them up and say, see, this is what a conspiracy theorist is. Somebody with no critical thinking skills who just believes every conspiracy that comes into the arena. So I personally am convinced that that is going on. Why wouldn't it be going on? Because they are concerned about people believing in conspiracy theories. So why not use tactics like that to discredit everybody? Why not do that? You know, makes perfect logical sense to me. What do you think the intelligence agencies are sitting down doing all day? Huh? What, just tracking terrorists? No. You know, there are many elements of the government and the deep state which focus on subversive tactics, psychological manipulation. All right, Edward Bernays 101. They've probably got people 10 times as smart as Edward Bernays in the deep state, in the UK, in the US, and, you know, anywhere else. They got people like, you know, Bernays on the Limitless pill. You see that movie Limitless? Yeah, give Edward Bernays a Limitless pill and then see what he can do. They probably got people like that working for them now in their think tanks and their social engineering the social engineering think tanks. Anyway, let me get to your questions now, guys. Been ranting and raving for long enough, so let me get to the backlog of questions. Okay, let me put this on main screen, pop out chat. Okay, we at F2. Okay, right. So let's get to your questions. I've got a backlog here. Mark says, Street Life, recently heard about someone taking crazy risks, dropping off fair amounts, and he only makes a bit more than me working, and I don't have a great wage. Yeah. I mean, the days of making millions on the streets as just the average street kid, those are gone. Those are gone. There's too much surveillance now. There's too many, you know, ways for you to get caught. You're not gonna become rich off the streets anymore, not unless the police select you as some kind of you know, informant or something, or one of these mafias like the Russian mob or the Turks or some want to use you for a certain amount of time. But really and truly, you know, 99.9% of people who try crime as a career, you're gonna get nowhere. You know, you're gonna get nowhere. The days of making loads of money on the streets, that's all gone. That all died in the 90s. Yeah, in the 90s, I'm not gonna lie, there were lots of people from my area who were making unbelievable amounts of money from selling drugs, like crazy money. But times have changed. It's not the same anymore. So stay the hell away from all that. Okay, Abs TV says, why do you think a lot of people in this life focus on stupid things like material holes and making money just to buy shit to show off? Yeah, well, it's a narcissistic culture, isn't it? Everybody, you see, there's the hive mind, there's the herd mentality. When you have a few alpha males in a particular scene, everybody is going to try and emulate what those alpha males are doing. And if those alpha males are ultra narcissists, everyone else is going to try and be an ultra narcissist. All the girls are going to desire those ultra narcissist alpha males who are throwing their weight around. That's all you need. You just need a couple guys at the center of that scene who are narcissistic alpha males, and everybody else is going to follow. That's what you're going to get. And so that's what you have now. You have a whole culture. It's not just one or two. It's like loads of them. It's a whole culture, which is like a feedback loop. It's a catch-22 because the music promotes that kind of attitude and lifestyle. What's going on in the streets promotes it. Social media promotes it. It's just a toxic environment. Stay well away from it. If you want to live a nice life, stay away from it. That's what I can tell you. Errol Spence Jr. says, Hatman, can you define what is snitching on the roads? Well, you know, I've seen some people say that snitching is when you and a fellow criminal are doing some type of move together, right? You're selling drugs, you're doing a robbery, and then you both get nicked, and then you snitch on your friend. You know, you inform on your friend. That's snitching. Some people say that's the only thing that is snitching. Other people say no, it's that, and it's also snitching on anybody else, even if they're your enemy who's doing criminal activity. That's snitching too. And then there are people who say that everything is snitching. Even if you're just an average citizen, you're a civilian, you're not into the life of crime. If you go to the police and inform on people selling drugs or people committing robbery or someone who done a murder, that's still snitching. So people have different terms for what, you know, snitching is, but certainly for the individuals I've been talking about, high level gangsters and criminals, those guys are not supposed to be talking to the police according to the official street code, right? They're not supposed to be going to the police and getting other people locked up so they can get a reduced sentence. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. That's snitching. Okay? So that just shows you that the game is a joke. Yeah? The top guys, the top bad boys on the roads, they're snitching. So what does that tell you? There is no honor. There is no rules. Forget about the rules. Yeah? It's just a bunch of sociopaths and psychopaths playing other people for their own benefit. That's all it is. Just the same as geopolitics. There are no rules. It's like in the movie Carlito's Way. You know the movie Carlito's Way? Have you seen that movie? Where Sean Penn plays Al Pacino's lawyer. And Sean Penn, in the end, turns out to be like a rat. Just a rat, basically, yeah? And when he's in his hospital bed, he says, there's only one rule. Save your own ass. That's the only rule. And that's the truth. That's what the top people on the streets are really like. That's the only rule they follow. Save your own ass. That's it. By any means necessary. They don't give a damn about the whole snitching code. Most of them. They don't give a damn about that. You know, a lot of the ones who don't snitch are the ones who don't have any leverage on anybody. Yeah? The ones who go prison and don't snitch, they don't have any information a lot of the time that the police want. They might even try and snitch and the police will say, we've already got that. We've already got that guy. We don't need no information from you. And again, there might be some of them who still stick to the code and they don't snitch, but I'm telling you, in this day and age, it's even fewer and far between than it used to be. So the whole game's a joke. Don't get involved in none of that street stuff, man. It's all nonsense. Big up Iceman Click. G-Man Boxing says, Hatman had a friend from school who was born to a normal middle-class family here in Dublin. He chose to be a drug dealer, having a good job. He wanted to be a thug. He was killed in January when he was 23. Sad story, bro. Sad story. People get sucked in by the allure of that life. You know, the prestige, the girls, all that kind of business, all that comes with it. But in the long run, you see these girls, right? When you're young, who go after bad boys, those girls grow out of it. Most of them grow out of it. And the ones who don't grow out of it, the girls who hit their late 20s and 30s and they're still trying to date bad boys, look at the state of those girls. You wouldn't even want to be with those girls. Most of them look washed up. You wouldn't want someone like that being your wife, being your girlfriend when you're 30, 31, 30, 35. Look at the state of them. These party girls who have been taking all drugs and drinking and smoking weed and shit. Look at the state of them by the time they reach their, early mid-30s. They look horrible. All right, so the ones who stay after bad boys look terrible when they get old. You want them anyway. And the ones who grow out of it, which is most of them, by the time they're in their mid-20s, they're looking to move away from bad boys because they've seen what comes with that. They've seen the arrests. They've seen the police come lick down your door in the middle of the night or early in the morning. They've seen people go jail. They've seen the stabbings and the shootings and, they've seen all that. They've seen the bad side of it. And they're like, you know what? I can't be dating guys like that no more. And what do? Then they start looking for guys who have got legitimate jobs. Guys who have got businesses. Guys who are traders or whatever it is they do. They start looking for those guys now. And so there's opportunities there for someone who's got their shit together and who has a business and who's making nice money, legit money. Just wait until you get to your mid-20s, late. And I know it's easy to say just wait. But trust me, those girls who you're probably not even going to want them girls by then anyway. Because those girls have been passed around like a spliff, around the whole damn neighborhood. But the tables will turn. That's my point. Okay. Abdul says, is snitching on enemies acceptable? I mean, to me, I don't care about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Me personally, I really don't care because I'm not part of the street life no more. I don't care about none of that. But in terms of on the street, is snitching acceptable to most street people now in terms of snitching your enemy? I don't know. Maybe it is. I mean, you look at Tekashi 6ix9ine, right? He snitched on a bunch of his friends to get out of his prison sentence, and a lot of his fans are still backing him. So maybe this generation is very different than my generation, and snitching is a lot more acceptable now. I don't know, but it's all just deviousness, isn't it? It's all deviousness. So keep yourself out of a culture, of a situation where you're going to be dealing with loads of devious people. That's just a big headache that you don't need. All right, so stay away from the streets. Okay, Iceman Click says, African Child, he's from my area. You from Tottenham, yeah? Iceman Click. Because African Child says he's from Tottenham. Spider, yeah, Spider. No, it's not. From what I've heard, it's not the same It's not the same Spider who snitched on K Coke. That's a different Spider, as far as I know. Okay, Gaylord Fokker, big up. Errol Spence Jr. says it's always the leaders in the gang who are the snakes. Indeed, because they're usually the most psychopathic or sociopathic. So yeah. Yes, big up Aaron. Abs TV says, are you into any stand-up comedians? Thoughts on comedians like George Carlin, Russell Peters? Yeah, I like George Carlin. George Carlin was good because he was very informative and he was into, the reality of the way our world is, geopolitics and all that kind of stuff. Russell Peters, he's cool. I don't find him like outrageously funny, but he's cool. Yes, Afro Soul, big up, big up. Mark says, those who don't rat spend a long time inside, then half of them are out the game anyway. Indeed. Right? Just like I said in previous podcasts, I knew people, right, from Brixton who went to prison when I was first starting secondary school. And they only just came out a couple years ago. These were like bad boys when I was first starting secondary school in Brixton, who only just came out a couple years ago. Like, I've lived a whole life, do you know what I mean, decades of my life since I finished secondary school, and these guys only just getting out of prison. Washed up old men. And yeah, like you say, a lot of the time the ones who ain't snitching, that's gonna be their fate. And when you get locked up on a life tariff, yeah, a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of youngsters are reckless and stupid. If you get life, yeah, in the UK, a life tariff, life means life. So you might only do 25 years. You might only do 30 years or 35. I say only, that's a hell of a long time. But you are detained for 99 years at your majesty's pleasure. You understand? So even when you come out, you're still serving a term. You still have to check in with your, your PO every 2 weeks or whatever it is. Yeah. And there are lots of restrictions. If you're somebody who murdered someone, when you come out of prison, there are lots of restrictions on you. I believe, certainly for the people I've known who've come out, from murder, they can't leave the country. They're stuck in England. They can't go no holidays. They can't go nowhere. And they still have to check in for the rest of their life with their PO every couple weeks. That's dead. You don't want to be doing that. That's so dead. You don't want to be doing that. Gennady Alvarez says a big increase in fraud these days. Yeah. Everybody's so online now that there's going to be a lot more fraud, Yeah, it's going to be a lot more fraud these days. Gennady says, all right, Errol Spence says, Hatman, I think black youths want to be part of that life because we want street cred amongst our friends and to impress girls. Indeed, but you have to understand there are certain people who set that tone, okay? If the majority of the black community were making money legitimately and making good money, if there were loads of people in your community, like if the alpha males in your neighborhood, the black alpha males, had legitimate businesses, guess what? The girls in your neighborhood wouldn't be chasing bad boys. If the bad boys in your community are not really making money and the alpha males in your community have legitimate businesses, the girls are going to be chasing the guys with the legitimate businesses. That's what's going to be happening, So it's when the alpha males in the community are, into a particular lifestyle, they're going to influence everybody else. So what they do is very important, And alpha males, of course, in the black community are always encouraged to become criminals. Or very often through the music, through the movies. It's a feedback loop. So everyone's encouraging each other to do it now. So it's a toxic environment. Stay the hell away from it. Anybody with any sense, you stay out of it. Don't engage in it. I know it's hard for youngsters because with young people live in a bubble. I remember what it was like being young. When you're young, it's almost as if the world don't exist outside of your little bubble. Everything that exists within your little circle of friends, that to you is the world. When you get older and you come out of that circle of friends and you travel and you see different parts of life, you realize that being in that little bubble where everything in your circle of friends mattered is all bullshit. It's like I was talking about when it came to the Cash Ali situation, where the street mentality in boxing can make people do silly things because they're still in that little bubble where they're trying to impress people in their little circle, which is just full of ignorant, people. You need to break out of that bubble. Don't let ignorant people around you. Be around more enlightened people that can see the bigger picture. I know sometimes it's easier said than done, but anybody with sense, stay away from all that foolishness. Yeah, Mark, exactly right. The young people don't understand. They're going to get sold down the river. They're going to get sold down the river. Colin Dale, good evening, sir. Have you got time in the future to give your thoughts on Scientology? I need to do more research into Scientology. I'm obviously aware of what Scientology is. L. Ron Hubbard, the fact that so many celebrities, and it's an interesting thing, Scientology, that there are so many celebrities involved in it, because it seemed to be something which L. Ron Hubbard actively tried to do, and the disciples of L. Ron Hubbard have tried to actively recruit celebrities, which is interesting, isn't it? Because celebrities are very influential people. So you've got, the John Travoltas, you've got the Tom Cruises and people like that who were Scientologists. Even someone like Charles Manson, who's someone I want to talk about in the future, he confessed to being a Scientologist at one stage of his life. So it's definitely something I want to cover in the future, but I'll be honest, I do have to do more research into the philosophy and the ideology of Scientology. I know a little bit about it, and it has some extraterrestrial element to it, but I do need to do more research into it before I can do a show on it. But big up Colin Dale. Okay, Errol Spence says, to be honest, the street life is not worth it because you will either end up in dead or in prison. I can agree, as you grow older, you won't even be friends. Yeah, you won't even be friends with most of these guys. Trust me, you won't be friends with most of these guys. Adrian Remedy said, I remember seeing Zuckerberg in a picture with his laptop and mic covered up with tape. I still do that. I still do that. In fact, well, I cover up the laptop, the camera, but when it comes to the microphone, I haven't been into. I mean, you can cover up the microphone with tape, but you're still gonna be able to hear. I remember seeing some guy in an interview somewhere where he said he actually opens his phone up and removes the microphone from his phone, and that way the only way you can pick up sound on his phone is if you use a hands-free. So when he makes calls, he just plugs his hands-free in, does his calls, but then when his phone's just lying around, it can't be used to listen in on any of his conversations. But obviously they have other ways, right, of listening into your conversations. Smart TVs and, smart meters and all kinds of stuff like that. There's many ways for them to listen to you now. I also saw a story about, is it Switzerland? A town in Switzerland, or maybe it's Switzerland as a country, being the first place to reject 5G on health grounds. Now that's very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting, because what's in Switzerland? In Geneva. I swear it is Switzerland. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. But for them to be rejecting 5G on health grounds, what does that tell you? It's like, I once knew a girl who, she worked in a government department, right? And I went to her house, and her mom also used to work for a government department. I think she worked for Thames Water or something like that. Or, no, well, I know is Thames Water private now? It's private, innit? It's not a government department. But it was some kind of government department to do with water and stuff like that. And obviously Thames Water used to be publicly owned. But anyway, the water bottles, right? She had a water bottle in the house, like a bottle of water, a glass bottle, from this particular government department. And it was made out of glass. Like, think about that. In a day when everything is made out of plastic, this government department that deals with, water and stuff like that, or maybe it was Thames Water, which I guess is a private company now. I can't remember which it was. But either way, this is an organization that deals with water. They don't even put their own water for their employees to drink in plastic bottles. They put it in glass bottles. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? And hardly anybody puts things in glass bottles now, unless you're talking about bottles of beer. And beer is full of estrogen, by the way. Most alcohol is full of estrogen. Look it up. Most of it is full of estrogen. Okay, let me read some of these here now. Graham Coleman said, I got called a snitch by a roadman because I had to give evidence against someone at work who was associated with roadman, but this guy was doing fucked up shit. Thoughts on that? Hey man, if you're not part of the life, do what you gotta do. You're a law-abiding citizen. You're not involved in no criminal activity. Don't feel like you have to, live by the code of the streets if you're not on the streets. You're a normal human being trying to live a normal life. Don't let the savages dictate how you're supposed to be living your life. That's my thoughts on that. Okay, G-Man Boxing says, Hatman, my mate from the gym uses rival RX F Guerrero. I tried them last week. I can tell fly gloves are way more comfortable. Yeah, I would imagine fly gloves are more comfortable. They cost like twice as much. So they should be. They should be. I can tell you that the rival RFX Guerrero sparring gloves are not as comfortable as the fight gloves. The fight gloves are way more comfortable than the sparring. The sparring gloves are fairly comfortable, but the fight gloves are a lot more comfortable than the sparring gloves of the same model. And actually, I'm gonna do a review on the rival RS100 sparring gloves. Those are way more comfortable than the Guerrero gloves as well. The RS100s. They are the newest sparring gloves that Rival have come out with, the RS100s. I got a pair of those. You know, I have my criticisms of them as well, but in terms of the comfort, they're very comfortable glove. The way that the fist placement is very, very good, so you don't have to overcompensate when you're hitting the target. You know, certain gloves, the way they place your fist, you feel like you have to overcompensate and turn your fist over even more to make it land on the knuckle because of the way the glove is shaped, particularly if you got, you know, bigger hands. But with the RS100s, the knuckle is in the perfect position. So when you're hitting the bag or you're hitting the sparring partner or the pads, you're hitting with a knuckle without having to overcompensate and turn your hand over even more, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, fly gloves, I mean, they cost like £350, £400 or whatever it is, depending on what gloves. So, yeah, I imagine they're going to be very comfortable. Abs TV said, I find it humorous how a lot of these males are so obsessed with females to the point where they'd sell their souls to get with a girl. Like, chill, bro. It's just a hole between a pair of legs. Yeah, it's true. It's true, but at the same time, we are all slaves to our own instincts. You know? We can't help being attracted to females. We have a natural urge to be with them, to be in their presence, not just for sex, but, you know, just to be around females is nice. You know, to be around a female, especially if she's a good female, you know, you enjoy her company, you know. She can cook some nice food, she smells nice, the way she moves. You know what I mean? It's nice. If you're around a nice female, it's a nice experience. And we have an instinct to be drawn to female. This is why I can't get down with the whole MGTOW. I'm not dissing no MGTOW people, but separating yourself from females completely, I don't see how it's going to work. It's going to drive you nuts, isn't it? It must drive you crazy. Because we have natural instincts to be attracted to females. Yeah, we are one half of an equation. Females are the other half. We need each other. We need each other. That's just the way it is. And some people feel the urge more strongly than others. And those who feel the urge extremely strongly are the ones who are, you know, probably willing to do a lot of crazy stuff, stupid stuff to try and fulfill the urge. You know. We need discipline, of course. You can't act on all your impulses, not just when it comes to females, but, you know, in many other instances. You need discipline. But if an urge is so ridiculously strong, all the discipline in the world is not going to help you. You will go crazy. So I do have to say that. Okay, Abs TV says Dave is a beast, one of my favorite from London right now. Yeah, I like Dave. You know, I don't really know anything about the modern music, but that guy Dave, is he called Santan Dave? He seems to be smarter than a lot of the other youngsters around, and I did like a couple of his tracks. I can't say I know that much about his music, but I have heard him talk a couple times in a few interviews, and I did like a couple of his tracks. So yeah, big up Santan Dave. He's from Streatham, right? So I think he's cool. Or Abs TV says Fredo is sick. That's another guy who that guy that I showed you before, Spider, African Child. That's another one who he disses in one of his videos. He's talking about Fredo. Mark says, does anyone give Crawler a chance against Lomachenko? I don't see any chance for Crawler against Lomachenko. That would be like Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson all over again if Crawler beat Lomachenko. I can't see that in a month of Sundays. I'd be amazed, gobsmacked. Gennady Alvarez says, do you think as a man it's better to get financially stable and marry in your 30s rather than your 20s? Yes I do. well, it's better to get financially stable as quickly as possible. But in terms of marriage, it all depends on the society you live in. In modern Western society, it's best you wait until your 30s, yes, because at that point you would have matured sufficiently, because there are so many temptations, right, in Western society. So many temptations, so many distractions. Life here is not simple. If you were somebody from a traditional society where it's very conservative, there are not so many distractions. They don't allow so many distractions in those societies. But in Western society, there are lots of different distractions. Everyone's promiscuous, and is just partying and drugs and drinking. There's all that shit which you're going to be exposed to through your teen years, through your 20s. Not until you get to your 30s, you're going to be like, you know what, let me slow down. And when you have matured mentally and you're in your 30s, then you're probably ready, if you want to get married, to settle down and find somebody, and find that, and that's a whole another conversation in itself, because it's not going to be easy to find somebody worth marrying. But at that point, that's when you can open yourself up and say, okay, I'm ready to get married if the right person presents themselves, Okay, what else we got here? Mark says he deserves the win from what happened to him, etc., but I just can't see it. Yeah, I got nothing against Crawler. Good luck to the guy. Good luck to him, man. He deserves the shot. He's a mandatory at the end of the day. But I don't give him a hope in hell. No bat in hell's chance. I can't see it. Gennady Alvarez says, do you think as a... Okay, yeah, I already answered that. Mark says that hammer fight has been pushed all over YouTube suggestions. Yeah, it's the girl power, right? It's the girl power. Abdul says the content that Fredo raps about is basic and same old. Name me a song, because when I go to the gym, I hear some of these songs by these youngsters. Name me a song. What is Fredo's most famous song? I think I've seen Fredo. He's some mixed race boy, right? Light skinned looking boy. What songs has he made? Fredo. Okay, Abdul says no longer. Oh, no wonder estrogen is filled. Okay, I guess you're talking about alcohol. Amir Khan is attracted to trannies. He's a massive pisshead. Vader D says, yo, Hatman, I'm on a delay. I just got onto you taking questions. I want to ask what the alternative podcast channels is. Tough to find non-Joe Rogan ones. A good place to start would be the Higher Side Chats. Yeah, just go onto YouTube and type in the Higher Side Chats. That is a very good place to start. I forget the guy's name. What's the guy's name? Greg Carlwood. Greg Carlwood is the guy who does the Higher Side Chats. He has a very good podcast. Listen to the Higher Side Chats. I personally like the Higher Side Chats. He's a very objective-minded young man, intelligent. Again, I don't agree with everything. We can't agree with everybody on everything. But yeah, Greg Carlwood is a good place to start. I also like some of the more out there people because just because somebody is a little out there, it doesn't mean they're not right sometimes. And a lot of people kind of take my approach. I mean, there are certain people who take my approach, and I'm a lot more circumspect when it comes to dealing with conspiracy theories, where I don't like to theorize out in the ether too much. I like to talk about stuff which is at least grounded in some tangible evidence, or some kind of logical reasoning, whereas other people are out there talking about pie in the sky. But that's important too. Just because you're talking about pie in the sky, it doesn't mean the pie in the sky ain't true. It's like if you're a scientist, right? One of the most important things to have if you're a scientist is imagination. The ability to think outside the box, the ability to come up with concepts and all that kind of stuff through intuition, and then that's how you discover things, by letting your imagination wander. And so the same goes for being someone in the truth movement or a conspiracy researcher. You have to let your mind wander if you want to, hope to arrive at the truth. It doesn't mean that every theory you come up with is going to be right. No, it's not going to be right every time. You're going to come up with theories that are wrong. That's okay. That's part of the process. Yeah, it's the trial and error. And some people who are a bit more out there, Mike Williams is a guy who, when I put on the screen before, who deals with the Paul is dead conspiracy. He's a little more out there. He's not all the way out there, but he's a little more out there, Mike Williams. I listen to his stuff on a regular basis, Mike Williams. David Icke, obviously. Greg Carwood, I would say, is a really good place to start, though, with the higher side chats. That's a really good place to start. What else now? Crow 777. He's kind of out there as well. Like real out there, Crow 777. But Crow 777 has done some good stuff on vaccines and other such like. There's a whole heap of them out there still. Still available. Mark Devlin as well is another one. He's a British guy who's a former DJ. I think he still does DJ a little bit. He's kind of out there as well. But again, these guys are all gonna get you thinking and thinking outside the box, thinking about different concepts. I'm not one of them people that just goes to one of these YouTube channels and just buys everything they're talking about wholesale. I don't do that. I apply my own filter, my own critical analysis to all the information that I digest. But it's worth listening to out there theories and stuff like that, because at least you've heard it out. At least you've heard them out. I remember when I used to watch what's it called now, Ancient Aliens, which was mostly a load of rubbish, but I'm glad I watched it because at least I've got that box ticked. I've seen it, I've heard what they've had to say, I've looked at their evidence, I've given it a chance to convince me, and it hasn't convinced me. Same with the flat earth stuff. I don't want to ridicule nobody who believes in a flat earth, but I've looked at it and I'm not convinced by it. Do I have plenty of questions about the nature of this earth and the nature of reality and the situation with regards to the Apollo missions and yeah, I've got loads of questions. I've got loads of suspicions, but I can't come to the conclusion that the earth is flat based upon the evidence that these flat earthers have presented to me. No, anyway. Okay, Abs TV says, listen to Fredo Funky Friday. Alchemy Diagram says, have you watched any of the Hot Boxing Mike Tyson podcasts? He's a wise and knowledgeable dude and always has guests. Utmost respect. Nah, I don't really watch the Mike. I know about the Mike Tyson podcast, and I saw the little bit where he's talking about Muhammad Ali. But I grew up on Mike Tyson. I've seen 1,000,001 Mike Tyson documentaries. I've read Mike Tyson books. I've seen so many Mike Tyson interviews. I feel like there's nothing. Mike Tyson doesn't have so much information for me personally that I really want to hear at this point. He might have a few little anecdotes here and there, but I feel like I've heard most of what Mike Tyson has to say. So that's just me personally. Other people is different, and that's cool. People who like Mike Tyson podcasts, go ahead. But me personally, it doesn't really interest me. Maybe the little snippets from the Mike Tyson podcast, where he's talking about Muhammad Ali and he starts crying and stuff. I mean, I'm not surprised he started crying. Tyson's a very emotional guy. But occasionally those little clips I'll watch, but I wouldn't sit down and watch a whole Mike Tyson podcast or a Teddy Atlas podcast. I mean, you talk about narcissism 101. Teddy Atlas is, exhibit A. Teddy Atlas, you see, this is why Teddy Atlas has had such a difficult relationship with so many fighters he's worked with over the years. Because Teddy Atlas is an extremely overbearing character, deeply narcissistic. I know he tries to hide it, but he's a deeply narcissistic guy, very, very egotistical, and that's why his relationship with Michael Moorer broke down. That's why his relationship with Shannon Briggs broke down. That's why his relationship with so many fighters and colleagues in the broadcasting industry broke down, because he's just so narcissistic. It's unbelievable, that guy. And again, he tries to tone it down for the cameras, but it's there. And with Mike Tyson, obviously Mike Tyson was a little, he was a little hood rat when he moved up to the Catskills and was adopted by D'Amato. So I'm sure Mike Tyson was doing all kinds of stuff that he shouldn't have been doing when he was up there in the Catskills. Definitely. But at the same time, you had Teddy Atlas, who was you know, a narcissistic individual who fancied himself as a tough guy. You have to understand, Teddy Atlas was from a middle-class family, a middle-class Jewish family, Teddy Atlas. But yet, you see why I was talking about the streets? Teddy Atlas thought it would be a good idea to throw away the privileged position that he was born into as a middle-class individual whose dad was a well-known doctor and stuff like that. He threw all that away to try and be a criminal. That's what Teddy Atlas did. I mean, talk about dumb. He'd been given a good life on a silver platter. He threw it all away because he wanted to be a tough guy in the streets. That's how he ended up with a big scar on his face. Yeah? And the rest is history. So yeah, Teddy Atlas, that's another guy who I couldn't watch a whole Teddy Atlas podcast. I seen a little bit of one where he's talking about Tyson Fury and this, that, and the other, but yeah, I've heard everything Teddy Atlas has got to say. I like Teddy Atlas and his little snippets on ESPN, you know, where he's ranting and raving about judging and officials and stuff like that. But when it comes to any kind of sit down for 2 hours and listen to Teddy Atlas, I can't do it, bro. The only thing I'd watch when it comes to a podcast that was 2 hours long involving Teddy Atlas or involving Mike Tyson is if they did the podcast together. Because I know they don't like each other. So if they get some kind of intermediary and they get Teddy Atlas on one side and Mike Tyson on the other side, I'll sit down for 2 hours and I'll watch it. Or even if they got Teddy Atlas on one side and Kevin Rooney on the other side, because they don't like each other either, I sit down and watch that, because we'd hear some home truths. Then we might actually hear some information that we haven't heard before if we had those two guys opposite each other. But Teddy Atlas by himself, Mike Tyson by himself, yeah, nah. Same Hussein says, yo Hartman, how much do you think it would cost to open a decent boxing gym in London? 50k? I have got no idea. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and act like I've got some kind of, you know, realistic idea of how much it costs to open a decent boxing gym. I've got no idea. You know, the rent costs, how much revenue you're going to be bringing in. I actually saw a bit of that interview with Don Charles where he's talking about his business model for his gym, where his gym is like 75% commercial use and 25% professional. So I guess he has a bunch of like keep fit classes and, you know, women and children and all them kind of people there, personal trainers who hire, who pay him money to use the facilities and have their clients come in. I guess that's what he's talking about. I don't know nothing about that. You know, maybe I'll move into that later on in my life, but at this stage I don't know nothing about that. You know, I'll be honest, in terms of how much it costs and how much you can expect to make. I'm not sure. Errol Spence Jr. said, yo, what type of woman do you go for, as in body wise? The typical, I'm just a stereotypical black man. I go for a woman with a big bum, a small waist, and preferably big breasts as well. The big breast is not as essential as a big bum, but at the same time, if a woman has like big breasts and like she's pretty and her bum is not particularly big but it's there, that's acceptable as well. But preferably a woman with a big bum, small waist, you know, the typical black man business. I've been like that from when I was a child, you know. That's so, you know, because I always contend that we are all genetically predisposed to be attracted to certain features, certain physical features which are more common within our own race. Because nobody taught me to be attracted to women with big bums. You know, I didn't grow, see, my parents, let me not say they're socially conservative, because my parents, for people of their generation, they're fairly liberal, but they were certainly not people who liked swearing in the house. You see, I got good parents, you know, and they were not, a lot of my friends have got bad breed parents, you know, parents who come from bad families, criminal parents. My parents are good parents, hardworking people, you know, straight-laced individuals, and they didn't like swearing in the house. They didn't like, you know, sexually graphic things in the house or anything like that. So I didn't grow up in an environment where I saw a lot of, you know, I wasn't exposed to a lot of female sexual images or anything like that. You understand? So it was just from very young, I was just attracted to girls or women with big bums from young. You understand? This is a genetic thing. Now you can be conditioned, you know, once you start growing up, you can be conditioned to liking other things. And that's one of the things I've noticed when it comes to things like weave, and even when it comes to implants, some guys literally are raised in strip clubs in places like Atlanta in America, yeah, where from teenagers they're in strip clubs, and so they acquire a taste for the fake look. You understand? When it's not naturally there, but they acquire a taste for it. You can acquire a taste for lots of things. You know, the first time that you've ever had beer, those of you who have drunk alcohol in your lives, the first time you taste beer, that shit don't taste nice. It's disgusting. But over time you acquire a taste for it if you keep drinking it, and eventually you end up liking it. You know? Abs TV says, important one, your thoughts on psychedelics and its apparent capabilities of giving you new perspectives and benefits, etc. Well, I've never taken psychedelics myself, but I can certainly imagine how they would be able to expand your mind and, you know, get you to think outside the box, because certainly smoking weed does that to a lesser degree. All right, this is why so many music artists smoke weed, because when you smoke weed, all kinds of different concepts come into your mind. You know, all kinds of things that you hadn't thought about before, you start thinking about. So it does expand your mind. But at the same time, I don't want to advocate people taking those substances, because there are negatives. And, you know, as in with a lot of spiritual people and a lot of religious people, they will tell you that drugs are a gateway to demonic possession, as they call it. And I've seen certain things like that. I mean, I want to talk about, just briefly, Graham Hancock, right? I've got Graham Hancock's latest, in fact, no, I think he's just come out with another book just recently in the past couple weeks. But prior to that book, his most recent book was Magicians of the Gods. I've got that book. And after he released Magicians of the Gods, Graham Hancock nearly died. All right, he had some kind of blackout where I think he went into a coma and all kind of stuff, and he doesn't really explain how this happened. I'm gonna say that the reason that he had that coma, all right, and it might be a leap here, but I reckon there's some logic to it. I think the reason that he fell into that coma and he had that blackout is because he's been taking so many psychedelics. Graham Hancock has been rinsing ayahuasca and DMT. And before he was rinsing ayahuasca and DMT, this guy had a cannabis habit that had lasted for like 20 years, where he was smoking like a chimney day in, day out, while he was writing all his books and doing all these lectures and you know, traveling the world and all this kind of stuff. I'm saying that it's a result of him abusing his body with all these psychedelics and bloody drugs and all this shit. Yeah, it's a result of all that. And Graham Hancock also alluded to some dark experiences that he and other people who had taken ayahuasca had started having after they came back to the UK. That they were having dark experiences, like, you know, it sounds spooky, like there was some kind of demonic experiences that he was having. So I'd always err on the side of caution when it comes to talking about psychedelics and stuff like that. Whether you think it's demonic or whether you just think it can send you crazy because it can alter your brain chemistry, you know, choose which. You still have to be very cautious. Okay, Errol Spence says, me as well, Abs TV. I find skinny girls unattractive, no offense. Me too. I can't be with no skinny girl, man. I can't do it, bro. I don't care how pretty your face is. If the girl is skinny, nope, it's not happening. It's not happening. Not happening, bro. Aaron says, do you know Jordan Peterson and what do you think of him? Yeah, I've been asked this before. I do know Jordan Peterson. I have seen, you know, a couple of his videos, but I'm not as familiar with him as I am with a lot of other people, I'll be honest. Errol Spence says, Hatman, I know you've discussed your dating stories in one of your first episodes, but is it possible you could give us more if you wish to? Possibly, but as I say, the young lady who I'm involved with at the moment, I don't know for a fact, but I suspect she does listen to these podcasts. Which is why I'm kind of holding back, you know, at the moment when it comes to my dating stories. Blue Heron, what's good? Bit late to the show. Gennady says you need to watch Everything is a Rich Man's Trick. Blue Heron says, any progress on the flat earth? By the way, what's your take on dual nationality and potential conflict of interest? An example being dual Israeli and US citizens. That's a good question. I'm a dual national. But there's no real conflict of interest with, with my dual nationality, because my country of birth is not of any real political consequence to anybody. But yeah, when it comes to like Israel and US, of course there's a conflict of interest there, particularly when you have dual nationals who are in the Senate, because there's a very high percentage of dual American Israeli citizens in the American Senate, and if nobody can see the very obvious conflict of interest there, I don't know what's wrong with them. So that's an open and shut case. Blue Heron says, one other thing, bro, what profession were you doing whilst you were in the Middle East? I've been involved in audio production for a long time now, for many years. Audio engineering. Abdul says, if Ali didn't get Parkinson's, would he have made a good trainer, analyst, politician? I hope he wouldn't have gone down the line of politician, because politics is a cesspool. But analyst, yes. Trainer, I'm not sure. Analyst, definitely, but I'm not sure about trainer. I don't know. Because Ali did a lot of things wrong technically, so he wasn't the most technical guy. He was an athletic guy, he was smart, but from a technical point of view, he did loads of things wrong. And he was such an egotistical person. Even though Ali's very charismatic and funny and likable, he was very egotistical. And so someone who's that egotistical, they might have a mindset of, my way is the best way to do things, and if you're not doing it the way I used to do it, then you're doing it wrong. You understand? So I'm not sure how he would have been as a trainer. Gennady Alvarez says, did Tyson and Rooney ever see each other again like Tyson and Atlas did? That's a good question. I don't know. Gennady Alvarez says, do you think Ali was taken out by the deep state? I think it's probably a stretch to say Ali was taken out by the deep state, because he was already an old man suffering from Parkinson's, and in terms of how he got Parkinson's in the first place, I mean, just look at Ali's fights. He had brutal fights, and you can get Parkinson's syndrome from boxing. You can look at Freddie Roach. Some people are going to get it worse than others, and Ali took a hell of a lot of punches in his career. Alchemy Diagram says, Teddy Atlas and Mike Tyson podcast together, I'd pay to watch that. Me too. Me too. Oh my gosh, I'd pay to watch that. Abs Boxing TV says, do you think Ricky Hatton was the great as a lot of Brits make him out to be? I think he was overrated. I mean, a lot of fighters are overrated. I personally was never really a Ricky Hatton fan. I never liked his style. I thought he was really a mauler. Not even a proper pressure fighter, just a mauler. He was very scrappy with his punches, and I never took to Ricky Hatton's style at all. I just thought he wasn't a nice style to watch. Like when he fought Costa Zoo, that was one of the most ugly fights I've seen. Just mauling, and it's horrible. I mean, Andre Ward could be a mauler at times, but Ricky Hatton made Andre Ward look pretty. I mean, Ricky Hatton, man, he wasn't quite as bad as John Ruiz, because John Ruiz was a horrible mauler. Oh my god. If you ever saw a quote-unquote prime John Ruiz, oh god. That was torture to sit for a John Ruiz fight. There was so much mauling in John Ruiz fights. Oh god. But Ricky Hatton was similar, at light welterweight. He was just such a I just never found him aesthetically nice to watch. And his wins, Castillo was way over the hill. He was totally shot. He beat Malignaggi, but who doesn't beat Malignaggi, right? He got very contentious decisions over Urango and Collazo. And then he got cleaned out by Pacquiao, lost to Mayweather. Look, Ricky Hatton was a personality, and he was an everyman. He appealed to working class Brits because he had that down to earth, everyman kind of vibe about him. You know, where he's someone that people could imagine themselves being in the pub having a drink with. You know, so it's really like, you know, like in the world of politics, is identity politics. So a lot of women, for example, started voting for Hillary or backing Hillary just because she's a woman. With Ricky Hatton, the same thing. It's not really about his prowess as a fighter as much as it is about what he represents as a person. You know, and people in Britain felt like he represented the working class British man. You know, and so they got behind him and they loved him because of that. That he wasn't like one of the polished celebrities. He was like a working class British man, you know, and they liked that about him. So that's the reason that he, you know, that's one of the main reasons why he was as successful as he was, as popular as he was, excuse me, because there were many fighters, many British fighters who were more successful than Ricky Hatton, you know, had better resumes, but they weren't as popular as him, you know, because they didn't have that same appeal. So overrated, I mean, to be honest with you, whenever I've criticized Ricky Hatton and said that, you know, talked about his wins and his resume, I haven't got that much backlash, certainly not in recent years. And I think part of that might be because there are so many other British fighters, you know, Joe Calzaghe and Froch and all these other kind of people who I rate much higher than Ricky Hatton. And I think other people also rate him higher than Ricky Hatton. So when I say I wasn't that good, I don't think that many people are offended by it anymore, you know, because back in Ricky Hatton's heyday, he was the only guy virtually in the UK, you know, he was carrying British boxing then. But since his time, you know, there have been other people, particularly Froch, who's emerged, and he's kind of, you can't really, I've been critical of Froch in the past, don't get it twisted, because I did think that there was a time when his fans went overboard. But Froch was a warrior, you know. Froch went in there and he fought the best of the best on the road. He didn't get cleaned out like the way Hatton got cleaned out. Hatton got cleaned out by Pacquiao. You know what I mean? Like Carl Froch never got cleaned out. You know, when he fought Ward, when he fought Kessler, you know, nobody ever stopped Carl Froch. So. Big up Darrell Carter. Blue Heron says, have you done any research into the moon landings? What's your take on it? Yes, I have done research into the moon landings, and my take on it is this. I'm not convinced by the moon landing footage. I'm not convinced by the moon landing photographs. I think that I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence to suggest that the what we saw of the moon landings was faked. But at the same time, I'm not completely discounting the possibility that we have been to the moon, and I'm not discounting the possibility that some of the Apollo missions went to the moon. Yeah, I'm not discounting that possibility, but I'm also pretty convinced that there was some kind of fakery that went on with some of the Apollo missions. Yeah, I mean, it could be a situation where they faked the first Apollo mission just to win the space race, and then after that maybe they really went to the moon, you know. I'm open to that possibility, but I definitely am 100% convinced that there's something subversive, there's something deceptive going on with regards to those Apollo missions, you know, and this idea that they've lost the technology and they've lost all the original blueprints. All of that stuff just seems like complete nonsense to me. You're talking about the greatest achievement in the history of mankind, and you've lost all the blueprints? Get the fuck out of here. Those blueprints would have been, you know, carved in stone somewhere, and you're trying to tell me you lost them. It's just so absurd to be you know, claiming something like that. So I'm highly suspicious of the moon landings and the Apollo missions, not because I definitely think they never went there, but they're hiding something. That's what I'll say. They're hiding something. Okay, Mark says, Hatman, I know you think a draw was fair for Fury versus Wilder, but do you think it could have always been a draw no matter what? Anyway, as long as Fury didn't get KO'd? I mean, that's a question I can't answer. I don't know. I mean, you have to imagine that, being in the US, you would think that Wilder's gonna get preferential treatment, right? But at the same time, Showtime clearly saw the potential in Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury sold that fight. Showtime are not stupid. They know that what Conor McGregor is doing in the United States as an Irishman. Tyson Fury, being an Englishman with Irish, gypsy roots, the same kind of brash, gregarious personality as a Conor McGregor. They know that they have got potential there to make him boxing's version of Conor McGregor. And ESPN obviously know that too. So in boxing, it's all about who is a potential cash cow and what kind of control you can have over them. Yeah? And I learned this the hard way when David Haye went to Germany and fought Nikolai Valuev. Because I never thought that David Haye could win a decision over Valuev boxing the way that he boxed. Because he was very negative. He hardly threw any punches. I mean, Valuev didn't throw much, but neither of them would have thrown anything. Do you understand? So by the end of that fight, I was with Jim Watt, actually. Because Jim Watt was saying, I'm not sure David Haye's won this, because he was thinking in terms of how the German judges are going to see it. Right? And Valuev being Russian, he was based in Germany. Yeah? So when David Haye got the decision, I was like, whoa, David Haye got the decision? But then when I thought about it, I was like, well, David Haye's the cash cow here, right? None of these sanctioning bodies give a damn about Nikolai Valuev. This is a guy who don't even like boxing. This is a guy who's a huge guy, but he's an awful ambassador for boxing because he's just so dull. He doesn't fight in an entertaining fashion. He's slow. This is not somebody that we can really sell to the big networks and all that kind of stuff. This is not someone who's going to be a cash cow. But David Haye, this young guy, fresh-faced, and he can talk well and all this kind of business, the sanctioning bodies looked at him and said, he's the guy. He's the guy that's going to make us money. So even though this fight is in Valuev's adopted home country, forget about that. He's not making us no money. This is the guy, David Haye. So when it comes to Tyson Fury, look how long Deontay Wilder has been in the United States. 30 odd fights, 40 odd fights, whatever it is. By the time he fought Tyson Fury comes along, and in one fight, his profile is pretty much as big as Wilder's off one fight. So the sanctioning bodies would have seen that. I mean, think about it. The sanctioning body, the WBC, they forced Deontay Wilder to rematch Tyson Fury. Think about that. Think about that. That shows you that the WBC have a vested interest in Tyson Fury. So I don't think... So basically what I'm saying is, I don't think it's a cut and dry case that no matter what happened to Tyson Fury, even if he didn't get dropped, the decision would have gone Wilder's way, or they would have given it a draw. I don't think it's so cut and dry, because I do think that the WBC and Showtime and all the people around that event, they see the financial potential in Tyson Fury. You understand? They can see the benefits of Tyson Fury even winning. So maybe you could argue that a draw is something they wanted all along. You could argue that, because one of the things that is a goal of a broadcaster is a trilogy, right? Like the Canelo Golovkin trilogy, controversy sells. If they make it a draw, then they can sell a trilogy off the back of a draw. So I mean, I just, the whole idea that Tyson Fury was fitted up and he was robbed, I don't go along with that, okay? But was a draw a good result for the WBC, for Showtime, for ESPN, and for Fury and Wilder? Yes, it was. It was a good result. In fact, a draw, financially, I think was a better result than either one of them winning. Yeah. Because the controversy made the fight bigger. The controversy made the fallout bigger. It got people talking about the fight for longer than if Wilder would have won or if Fury would have won, in my opinion. So, at the end of the day, I'm not an insider in that situation, so I can't know for sure. Those are my thoughts on it. Big Nasty said, I just think it's hard to consider heavyweights in pound for pound rankings because of their skill to size ratio. Yeah, pound for pound wasn't really invented for heavyweights. Pound for pound was invented for people who are not heavyweights. Blue Heron, yeah, I hear what you're saying. You know, you're talking about the moon landing. You don't buy it. If we had the technology then, and as we, you know, we've advanced in technology since then, why have we not been there since? It's a good question. I mean, the Chinese claim they've been, right? I think a couple other countries claim they've been to the moon. You make it out what you will. I mean, it's easier to fake things today, right? With the CG that they have today, they could put anything on the screen and make it look real. You know? I mean, I remember watching, you know, the Planet of the Apes movie, the second one. You know, these new Planet of the Apes movies. The second one, where it's got the orangutan and stuff. And I watched that in the cinema, and I was blown away because they look like real monkeys. They look like real apes. Like, it looked like a real flipping thing that was CGI. So the stuff they can do with CGI today is crazy. How do you know if the Chinese people say they've been to the moon? How do you know they're on the moon? How do you know it's not CG? I mean, you know, I'm not saying it is. Maybe they have been there, but it's definitely something you have to consider. Abs TV says, I think there's a possibility they went to the moon, found some useful resources there, but they didn't want to release that information. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Obviously, there was a big theory going around years ago where people, you know, people were suggesting that they went to the moon and found aliens up there, and the aliens said, "Don't come back." You know, on the dark side of the moon, aliens said, "Don't come back here," and he ain't been back since. And it kind of alludes to that in the famous sci-fi movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. They go to the moon and they find some alien artifact, right? The monolith, the black monolith in 2001, which is a very occult cryptic movie. 2001, you know, very, very interesting, weird movie. And Stanley Kubrick was definitely somebody very in the know. Oh my gosh, Stanley Kubrick was in the know. And one of the most interesting things when it comes to the Apollo missions is Stanley Kubrick's movie. What's it called now? The movie with Jack Nicholson where he plays a crazy man. Oh, can't remember what it's called. What's it called? What's the name of the movie with Jack Nicholson where he's with his wife in the hotel and he goes crazy and they're in the snow? The Shining. Thank you, Gennady Alvarez. The Shining. Yeah. There is a documentary by, I think, is it Jay Weidner, where he basically analyzes The Shining and he shows that Stanley Kubrick has put a bunch of clues in The Shining which relate to his involvement or his alleged involvement in faking the moon landings or faking the Apollo missions. And it's a very, very compelling documentary to watch. The Jay Weidner analysis of The Shining. That is compelling. Compelling. Alright peeps, I'm gonna call it a night now here, but thank you guys for being with me. I'll catch you guys on the next one on Tuesday. This one's been fun. It feels like we've had fun today. We talked about some interesting stuff, so yeah, shout out to everybody. I'll catch you guys on Tuesday. Have a good weekend, stay safe, take care, yeah, and I'll see you over on the YouTube channel anyway. Alright, I'm out.